Hello and welcome to Blue Tinted Glasses, and this is your match preview for Everton against Leicester City. And I'm joined by our brother from down under, it's Luke. How are you doing today, Luke?
Good, thanks, mate. How are you?
Well, I think after our win against Spurs, despite them being extremely dodgy, all of a sudden things are looking a lot more rosy. But this, I think, is a huge game. I think after this one, we've got some tough fixtures coming up. So some points here would be very, very useful. But Everton are in very good form themselves. In fact, let's talk about that right now. So here we can see the two teams. And I suppose what's nice is if you look at this sort of bottom five, the only two teams that have got points recently are us two, but we're playing one another. So you can see we got that result against Spurs, and that's taken us out of the relegation zone onto the lofty heights of 17 points. Amazing. But you can see Everton, to be fair to them, David Moyes has come in and he's had the immediate bounce, 2 wins in a row, and that's really taken him out. And, you know, at the moment, it kind of looks like the bottom 3 will be from this bottom 4 that's currently in the table. But I think if we were to beat Everton, all of a sudden that really would drag them back into the relegation battle. So that's why I think this is an absolutely huge game. What do you think about the game coming up and the kind of current form that they've been in?
It's interesting, and we'll sure touch on it. But I think, to be honest with you, I don't want to put the Mozzes on it, mate, because every time I seem to go negative, we win, and when we go positive, we lose. But to be honest with you, from what I've just seen in this recent game, is structurally, defensively, a lot more sound they are with David Moyes. I actually think the football that Ruud van Nistelrooy plays actually is going to be well suited for this game. We'll talk about that soon.
Yeah, well, you can tell me a bit more about it. So, yeah, looking at their stats, I think they had a really good win against Spurs when they were 3-0 up at half time, although we just found ourselves that playing Spurs is maybe not the toughest game in the world right now. But here was their game against Brighton. Now, I think they obviously did some things that were very good, but at the same time, the stats do say that Everton had just 3 shots all game, 1 on target, which was their penalty, which luckily they scored. You could say it's a bit of a fortunate penalty they got. I think it was a clear handball, but a bit sort of weird. But otherwise, I would sort of say this is your classic David Moyes performance, which is very solid. Like, fair play. Brighton had a lot of shots, but look how many shots they had on target. They've done that kind of Forest thing where they're forcing them to take shots from not the best positions so they can deal with it pretty easy. So in other words, being pretty defensively resolute. And I think what David Moyes always thing that would associate with his sides is just solidity. Like, they know how to sort of just churn out performance. He's not really bothered about playing good stuff. There's a reason why, even though he won the Conference League with West Ham, they weren't really too fussed of him leaving because they knew that the football was attritional and hard to watch. What did you make of this game? Because obviously you've just been watching this back recently.
So yeah, the defense line all moves together, but basically immediately as soon as they're out of possession, they will drop back into a 5-3-2. Which is interesting to see. And then they kind of go back more to like a 4-2-3-1 in possession or 4-4-2. What I found is that, to be honest with you, like as defensively, structurally sound as they are, I don't mean to be big-headed and think we're the biggest club right now, but I got to be honest with you, I was not impressed with the build-up play from Everton. I thought it was quite lackey. They don't press too much because they don't want to be overly committed and be caught out of position. I would imagine that's 100% a David Moyes, obviously, instruction. So we are not going to press nowhere near to the magnitude of Brighton, in my opinion, or commit too many people or bodies forward. So I either has 0-0 written all over it, or I can see us getting a win here, to be honest with you. I'm actually feeling positive about this game. Okay, but as for this one here, it was scuff chances all I am.
Well, this is the team that they played against Brighton. What I did want to bring out, I'm just going to come back to our previous game that we played against Everton in a second. But I think the big thing is that the last time we played them, Everton was suffering a massive injury crisis. They had tons of players out. They were playing Ashley Young at fullback. You might remember, I think James Garner was playing as the other fullback. And it really felt like a wasted opportunity. That was the game where Steve Coopers took off Steffi Mavadidi near the end, even though he scored the goal and was the best player. And everyone was getting super, super pissed. But you can see that they're much stronger. Now, we're going to come to Calvert-Lewin in a second because he might not necessarily be in the game. But you can see that now they have got more pace at the back with O'Brien coming into the team. Mikolenko is pretty solid. Branthwaite, they were missing the last time we played them as well. He's a very good defender, left-footed defender. Was being linked to Manchester United for big money. They've got another faster winger now in Lindstrom in the team. And Ndiaye, we're going to talk about, who's been brilliant. They signed Oriel Mangala as well, was at Forest last season. They've just got a very solid team. I don't think they've got a team of too many stars. And Ndiaye, I think, is the player that clearly stands out. But my point is that even though, we got a point against them last time round, that was against a much weaker Everton team. And this Everton team is a lot stronger than it was the last time we played. That said, I wanted to cast your mind back to this. So this was the last time that we played the game. And I think everything you just mentioned there really sort of, I think, holds true. So you can see that this game, the XG for both teams was pretty low. The amount of big chances for both teams was pretty low. It was a pretty cagey affair. You can just sort of see the hint of the rain there in the background. You might remember that this game was that awful downpour. So it didn't make for the most conducive football. But I think that this one could be a tough watch, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Because I think you've got two teams who I think, in my heart of hearts, I don't think either team will want to lose this game. I think, of course, they'll want to win it, but I don't see them going gung-ho. It's interesting what you mentioned against their performance against Brighton, but I have a feeling that, that might be more safety first for Moyes. And you got to say it worked. He got points against them. He's not afraid to play terrible football, to be honest with you, in order to get a result. So we'll talk about that. But yeah, in this game, this is just my point I was making. So here's a team that they played in the last time that we played them. And you can see, look at the back. They had Michael Keane, James Garner, Ashley Young. But most everyone's, Dwight McNeil actually played in that game and was quite good. So yeah, they've got a much improved team this time round. Now, the last time we played them as well, the guy that really stood out was Ilman Ndiaye, who I think has been Everton's best player this season. Very good signing for them. And he was causing us quite a few problems. So cast your mind back here. This was the goal that he scored. So he was 1-on-1 here against James Justin. He cuts in, as you can see here, beating for pace, while fast moving along in the wrong position. So he's made some space there in the middle. Walks in and look, despite the fact he's been surrounded by several players, he managed to get a really good strike away and he found the bottom corner of net. So that was a great goal that he scored. And I think what was impressive about Everton in this game is they actually started the game pretty aggressively. They had Sean Dyche in charge, but it showed that, I think both under Sean Dyche and David Moyes, you might think, are they just going to be sitting back and playing long ball? But that's not the case. No Premier League teams really do that anymore. They will, at minimum, play a mid-block and try and press you from it. And as you can see, this was from that previous analysis. 13 minutes into the game, did 1-0 up, 4 shots, 2 on target. Leicester City had barely started going, which of course was the Steve Cooper classic of starting games very slowly. These days, we're better at starting it. We haven't been so good in the second half, though, of course, against Spurs, that was our best start to the second half of the season, and we did well. Now, also in that previous game, I just found this interesting because I was looking back at the analysis shows post that match to see what we could learn. And it was actually Bilal El Khanousi's first ever game for Leicester was this game. And what I do remember is that he really, really struggled in this one. So it really goes to show you just sort of that it takes even top players time to adapt. So what he was doing in this game is he was drifting out more to the left-hand side and he was kind of getting in the way of other players in the team. So he was struggling pretty badly. You could also see that he didn't feel that confident. He was taking up this position rather than these days, he'd be up here and be more of a supporting of the attack. So it was funny because I can see that in this particular game, he only played 56 minutes. I think in this one, we were surprised he wasn't hauled off at half time. We knew it was going to take him time to get into the game. And yeah, struggled to have an impact on his first start. You can see that his stats compared to where they are now is I reckon he'd probably make 4 or 5 times this number, certainly on the ground duels, ones and tackles. That's something I think he's really added to his game. So that was an interesting one because that was a brave decision from Cooper. And we all don't like Cooper, but some things he did which were good, like he brought Samari into the team, you've got to say, which proved to be a good masterstroke. But his use of Bilal wasn't so good. Rude's obviously chosen El Khanousi over Buonanotte. And whilst it's taken a bit of time to get going, has kind of worked. So, all right, let's move on to David Moyes. You can give me a kind of a run through, but here's what I feel he kind of does. We can talk about the more specifics of him. So tell us a little bit about David Moyes and how he manages his teams.
David Moyes, you can see in front of you, compact defense, physical and attritional approach if needed. That's very evident in the midfield. Threat on the break, happy to let the opposition have the ball. We all talked about that. Completely comfortable to set up when they're structurally sound, ready to defend every transitional wave that comes their way and make it hard for the opposition to shoot from good areas. That has everything to do with them basically dropping into a back 5 out of possession, which is almost immediate, and as well as to spring breaks from a mid-block.
And what have you sort of noticed this in the way that he's been playing against, say, Brighton or maybe the Villa game and things like that?
They will play a ball over the top, obviously, particularly most likely to Ndiaye, who is on the left, who has been really physically dominant. You will see Ndiaye go all over the pitch as well as that left-hand side, almost a 10 position, 8. He will get about the pitch. But one thing definitely to mention is they will still play it at the back, not crazy, but like you will see Pickford obviously come from the ball, playing it short to Tarkovsky, back to Pickford and dish it out wide, kind of similar to what we did in the championship. So there is elements there, and like they will commit their players up the pitch if they feel like they have them under threat. But like it's very, very structurally sound. It's not like they're going to overcommit sort of thing, like kind of like where we've seen the complete polar opposite with Ange Postecoglou's lineup with Tottenham.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. Probably the two teams couldn't be more sort of diametrically opposed. Spurs will take massive risks to try and score a goal. David Moyes, throughout his career, he's had a lot of success, but he's definitely plays with the handbrake on. That's not necessarily a bad thing. That's why they're always solid. Like I say, I think against Everton, it's very rare that they'll get battered. Of course, it could happen sometimes, but generally speaking, it's one of those teams that you don't really like playing just because even if you beat them, you know it's going to be a tough day at the office. And I think that, to be honest with you, is a good approach for a team that's trying to stay up. And I think ultimately why I'd be very surprised if Everton went down. And I think that's why they hired him after getting rid of Dyche. So let's take a look at some of the things that he's actually changed. So obviously he's only been in the job a few weeks, so it's very hard to really say what is he doing. Some of his players have been saying that like he's given us ideas, but he's trying to tease them in slowly and not just change too much too soon, which I think again is indicative of a manager experience. But here I saw this on the official Premier League website. I think it's quite interesting. So here you can see this was when Sean Dyche was their manager, and this was one of his last games against Bournemouth. And what you're seeing is that the purple passes are like the direct ones, and you can see they played pretty direct, right? Which is unsurprisingly. So Sean Dyche is, I think, a lot of people might say Dyche and Moyes are very similar. I think they're similar, but not as similar as you might think. And I think this will prove it. So you can see that under Dyche, they were prepared to play it very long. But if you compare this now to playing against Villa, you can actually see that they didn't do that as much, and they were a lot more sort of sideways passing. So he's actually become a Brendan Rodgers sideways passing FC type of manager. And that means that he said they were trying to be more controlled. You can also see here, can you see that when they were going direct, they were crosses. So before you can see that they were sort of going for the long ball much further from the back to front quickly. Whereas you can see that in this game, there's less of the back to front, but it's more get the ball into the final third and try and find Calvert-Lewin on the crossing. So a bit more sort of old-fashioned. Yeah.
I think the biggest difference that you can say before you move on between Sean Dyche and Moyes is Sean Dyche will 100% always try and commit to compressing the ball into one side of the pitch, and whereas Moyes is a lot more open than that. So I think that's the biggest difference or takeaway, in my opinion, between the two managers.
Very interesting. Yeah, and what I was going to also show is this. So I actually think that it's Moyes is trying to get them to play a little bit more football than they would under Dyche. So this is a goal that they scored against Spurs, and it's to Ilman and Diaye. So you can see they do some nice movements here. Their fullback gets the ball, or this actually might be, no, so this is Branthwaite. He's stepped up from centre back. He's seen in Diaye. He's going to play the ball into him. He's going for the 1-2 here with, I think this is the Corre, and he's going to turn Archie Gray and play in the space behind. Now, the one caveat I will say is this is classic Spurs. Is look how much space there is behind him, right? We pointed this out in the analysis show for the game we played against them, how they gave El Canoes the entire reign of the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. But fair play to them. They pick the pass, plays them through, and you can see India has got the run now on Spurs. They're going to attack here with 4 players, 3 mainly with another one supporting. But you got to say, brilliant from Ilman India. He gets the ball here. He does like a little step over. Again, where is their coverage? This is the classic Spurs thing of just the 2 centre-backs. Someone else has got back. I mean, Gray's got to get on his bike there. He's been bypassed there. That's pretty lazy for him, given, he's a young man. Gets in, beats Dragusin, and what a great finish this is into the top corner. This was a really good goal if you haven't seen it. So it's something that we've got to watch out for. I wonder if that means we might go for someone who's faster at fullback than JJ. We'll come to that in a moment with the team selections. But watch out. Yeah. But as you can see, they actually played some nice football there. Whereas Dyche, I think, would have just gone direct right away. They're trying to play some triangles and open people up. So watch out for that. And Everton are trying to add something to the game. Now, this I've seen you've put here. So tell me about this, because this could be huge for the game if true.
This could be huge. I actually got a big take that I want to talk to you about, and we'll get into it right now. Mm-hmm. So I feel bad for Dominic Calvert-Lewin, very career injury riddled. I feel sorry for him. If finally he comes back, he's not really been up to his usual self, obviously, because of the amount of injuries he's had. He's redone his hammy. He's not going to be back for weeks by the looks of it, from what I've read. Now, do you think Everton will be comfortable with having Beto up front? He's only got the 1 goal against Fulham in the 94th minute. He's been bang average, to be honest with you. I actually would not be surprised. This might be a crazy take, but he's done it before. I think they might push Ndiaye up front and then put Harrison on the left wing. What are your thoughts? Crazy take or
Yeah,
maybe?
they could do, or knowing Moyes, he would do something like put a midfielder up there, like he used to do back in the day with Marouane Fellaini. The thing I will say is that Beto is a physical player, so it is something that he could do. But that would be ideal for us if they go with someone like him up front. I just feel the thing is if they put Ilman and Ndiaye up, and that would be amazing for us because then he's the player that's most likely to beat his man and get the cross in. Jack Harrison is solid. He's had assists against Leicester before, but I don't think he's anywhere near the quality. But yes, I see what you're saying, that David Moyes is one of those people that, I mean, for example, I don't know if you know this, but Mikel Antonio wasn't always a striker in his career. And it was David Moyes that really turned him into that position because he favoured having that physically dominant, powerful player up top. So I would say whoever that profile is in the team, they're likely to do that. I will say Calvert-Lewin scored the brilliant goal against Spurs. I don't know if you saw it. We did some real sort of twinkle toes. So that is a big blow for them. I've just read here that he's out for quite a few weeks. That could cost them in a game like this. But that's really big for us because, you know, I think he gets a lot of hate. But, I mean, he's solid for Everton. He always scores decent goals and this has kept them in the division. And he's often been linked to a move away, but he's always stuck to the club. Well, okay, you've gone for a key battle here. I've got my own opinion, but tell me about what you think the key battle is going to be.
I know that you're either going to go the double pivot options or the right back. I'm sick of putting James Justin in key battles because it's so easy to because he's been so exploitable. But for I've gone something different because I think he's been a bit more sound the last couple of games. I've gone the classic, mate, the striker versus centre back. Now, you may not agree with this, but I think that this is the matchup to watch for. A ball over the top. If they're going to be very, very compact, this is another option where, you know, do you try and play him through the midfield and try and keep possession, or do you try and put a clever ball over the top and have Vardy run onto it and leave his man on toast? So I have just gone for this because it's something I would like to see. It's probably not the best shout, but what is your thoughts on this and who do you have as your key battle?
Well, I can see why you've gone for this. Actually, Vardy's on 7 goals. That's pretty impressive. That's 1 in 3. I think if you're in a relegation form, that's, you know, a 1 in 3 strike will maybe can save you, to be honest with you. And Vardy probably should have scored a couple more goals than that. So arguably he should already be on 10. Tarkowski's obviously a very solid player. I think that was a very shrewd acquisition from Everton. He was once linked with Leicester, and I think we actually should have signed him because he's pretty decent on the ball. Yeah, I would go for the fullback position just because all of the games that I've seen against Everton play, Ilman Ndiaye is the one that just stands out massively. I actually think if they hadn't assigned him, they'd be in big, big trouble. I think he's given them like a massive sort of creative spark. And I do also think that David Moyes, if you think about where he got success from West Ham, I think Jared Bowen was like a key player for him. He really transformed him. And even though Ilman Ndiaye plays on the left rather than the right like Jared Bowen does, I have a feeling that he's going to be almost the marquee player for David Moyes going forward. And as we saw, he already scored a really good goal against us in the King Power. He's got that kind of Mahrez quality where he could be having a quiet game and then out of nowhere, he just makes something happen. So that's where it's kind of dangerous. And that's why I wonder if we will do something to try and deal with him. Perhaps in the fullback position, we could go for Woyo Koulibaly, who came on with the extra pace. At the same time, I think Justin has been good, solid. But yeah, there's certainly some key battles. But I think, yeah, this is a sort of game. How do I expect it to go? I expect it to be a game where, like I say, I think it's going to be almost a bit like watching paint dry in some ways. I think that it will be very attritional, winning the physical battles. I think set pieces will be important. I actually think we'll have more possession than Everton, even though we'll be playing away from home. But I don't think we'll get that many high-quality chances, not compared to Spurs, who are massively open. Those gaps simply aren't going to appear against Everton. So it will be about, you know, a moment of magic, I think, for either team that could settle the game. So we've got our predicted lineups. Here's yours. So talk to me about what you think the predicted lineup will be.
Okay, this may be wrong. This is kind of what I would like to see, to be honest with you, but I'll explain why, and I'll start with the big one that you're probably staring at right now. Is, wow, you've dropped VK for Koulibaly. Now, I don't want to sign Lamptey. We've been linked with him from Brighton, but it was very evident that him pushing up the pitch with his pace had, I'm sorry, his name eludes me. What's the right back lad's name from Everton that's 6'6"? He's fucking huge. I think it's
O'Brien.
Thank you, O'Brien. I nearly said that, but I was too scared it was the wrong name. O'Brien is massive, mate. Koulibaly's obviously going to be like, it's obviously Mavididi. It's probably going to be playing O'Brien. But if Koulibaly can get up the pitch and has both feet options, very, very useful. And his pace could be absolutely electric. It's just a matter of, can he get back? How well can he read the Premier League? How well can he read transition? Is he going to get caught out in toast? I think Victor Christensen was very poor that first half. And I think that with Ndiaye, if he's going to be playing on that left wing, I would much rather JJ match up on it because of the physicality as well as pace. So I've gone for Koulibaly to make a start. People might not agree. I totally understand, but I think let's see what he can do. Now, Yannick Vestergaard and obviously Wout Faes, centre-back partnership. Big game for Vestergaard, in my opinion, has to be superb on the ball. It cannot get it wrong because I think that I agree with you. We are going to have a lot more possession, and our build-up play, in my opinion, is better than Everton's. It's just a matter of what can we do in the final third where we've been poor, and you've been right to point out that they're going to be very structurally defensive. It's going to take a worldie, particularly when they're defending of a back five. So that's the backs. That's for the defense. Now, Ndidi back on the pitch, I believe, last week. I think he'll be ready. And we do know that Everton are a very physically dominant side. And this is the perfect chance if he's available. Wilfred Ndidi and Samari, absolute bang-on double pivot to deal with Decore and the others. I think Decore was poor in that game. And I still think that we can get something from this if we can score. El Kanouche is your 10, of course. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Now, would you have Ayew play on the right-hand side of a Boynotte? He wins his aerial drills. He's a more physical player than Boynotte, or do you want to go for pace? If we can try and hit them on the break, which is going to be hard because of how defensively structurally sound they are, it's horses for courses. I'm not sure what your thoughts are. Come to you in a second. Mavididi on the left, in my opinion, against O'Brien, I think that his pace can get the better of him. It's just a matter of how well can he link up with other players, and I think it's worth highlighting now that as much as I slag off Dakova Reed, some of the passes he made, I don't think Mavididi would have done. He would have tried dinking it in futsal style off the top of the foot, or he would have cut in and just been taken too long. So Mavididi needs to be on one. He needs to make a decision before he pulls it. Sometimes I think he hesitates too much. And I've gone for Vardy up front. I think this is a game for Vardy to play. I don't think this is the one for Daka. I've gone for him to start the last few weeks. The physicality does not suit Daka at all. I think he would just get bullied off the ball. What are your thoughts on my 11, mate?
Well, I'll show you my 11, but yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't think there's going to be too many gaps in behind for someone like Daka to exploit. But I mean, my team, it's very boring because it's exactly the same team that we played against Spurs. And I just feel that because we got that win after 7 games, and generally speaking, none of these players really had a bad game. You're right. I do think Victor Christensen had a pretty poor first half, but I think he won a lot of challenges in that game. I actually think he won the most tackles of any Leicester player. And in the end was pretty good in the second half. That don't get me wrong. We've been talking about Moyes Koulibaly a lot. Ruud's obviously been bigging him up a lot in terms of wanting to use him. So I could see him being played in the team at either position. I think that's one of the reasons that we did it. That is interesting what you mentioned, that you're looking to maybe exploit their lack of pace on our left-hand side against them. That could be true. I will say the one thing that, was, I think, our biggest weakness in this game is that even though Bobby Reed played very well, I think from an offensive capacity, because he's, his physical stature is much worse than Mavididi, between him and Christensen, they were getting bullied a little bit down the right-hand side. And I guess the issue is that if they're going to play like a massive 6'6" fullback, as you say, the thing is, it depends on how far forward that player gets. So that might be something to watch out for. I didn't realize that Ndidi was that close to coming back. I think you're right that if he's available, especially Everton's midfield 3 is super physical. They're not really creative. So Winks is a sort of player who could get bullied pretty badly in a game like that. So if he's available, maybe. But I think I wouldn't rush Ndidi back is what I guess I'm saying. I think it's just he's going to be huge for the run-in. And I think, although to be fair, this is a game that we could be targeting to win. So I just think it's the classic, don't change a winning team. I don't expect them to do it. The Ayew versus Buonanotte discussion, you can clearly see we've heard these things that Ruud's told Buonanotte off for not wearing the right boots, etc., etc. I do think, though, that in this particular game, that Everton are a very physical team, and I do think you need players to be able to battle it. So that's why Ndidi would be ideal to come in. So I think Ayew will keep his place for that reason. I'm not necessarily his biggest fan. I think he's better as a finisher rather than a starter. But like I say, I think we're just going to keep the same sort of lineup. So we've got some closing thoughts here. Then we're also going to ask you a prediction in a moment. Just give me your closing thoughts as to what you think. How do Leicester win this game then? Because you've mentioned about us having better build-up play than Everton, etc., etc.
Better build-up play. It's just can Bilal get the better of, Idrissa Gueye? Can he deal with the physicality? He's very much stronger than he looks. I've pointed it out several times. He gets stuck in. He wins balls back. He does the dog's work. He's always the most tired player on the pitch for a reason. I think, to be honest with you, we obviously want to have box crashes in that game, particularly, but we don't want to overcommit and get caught, the ball over the top, similar to what we're kind of aiming for against Tottenham. So you will see Moyes. Moyes will put players up the pitch if the opposition's goalkeeper's taken the ball, and he'll commit then, and that's just about it. Otherwise, everyone's very, very in position, keeping their lines, staying in the lanes. In my opinion, we obviously are going to keep possession. I think we agree with you. We are going to have a lot more possession, in my opinion. It's just a matter of what can we do with it? Can we close it in the final third? Can we score with Weldy? Can we, get the second and third effort if it's to come off Pickford or off the bar? Do you know what I mean? So that's where I want to see. I don't want to see an overly high line, though, at the same time if we're going to play that, because that's when we can get caught undone. So, in my opinion, I think that we're going to be clever with possession and more clinical in the final third. Hopefully, Bilal's high in confidence, and hopefully, Vardy's got his shooting shoes on. What are your closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think this will be a bit of a different game. I think what we saw against Spurs is we deliberately kicked it long because we knew that their fullbacks would invert into midfield. So by kicking it long, it meant that they had to reset their position. And we were also trying to find the spaces there. So we actually, as Vardy said after the game, we simplified our game against them. And we went more direct, and it was a strategy to counter them. I think the issue is that if we try and do that against Everton, well, they've got better players in those areas, and it being a David Moyes team, they'll win the ball. So I do think our ability to play through and build will be much more important if we're going to get something out of the game. So that might be the approach that we take there. And ultimately, it will come down to, are we able to build through the back and make chances? Or do we get caught on the break through doing that and get exploited on the wings? And that's, like I say, I wouldn't be surprised if the game ends up with us having 60% possession compared to Everton's 40, but I could still either see them winning the game or us winning the game. It could be quite close in terms of what we look at it. I think then I'll ask you for your prediction. You're sounding more confident.
I am more confident. It's got kind of 0-0 written all over it, to be honest with you, but I'm going to go for a 1-0 victory, mate. And I think that to close my thoughts, I think if we are going to play a ball over the top, it can only be on transition, on a counter attack, off an interception. Otherwise, when they're out of position, that's my closing thoughts. 1-0 up the Foxes.
to counter the Toffees. I'm probably going to sit in the middle then and go 1-1. I think on paper, they have got the better team. I think they probably do have the more experienced Premier League manager and are in better form. But I do think the loss of Calvert-Lewin, and he's just mentioned there that they might be losing Mangala as well. Those are big misses. I think them not having the clinical edge up front will cost them. And he's also a focal point for them to make the attack. So I'll be honest with you, I think if they had those players, I think they would actually win. But them not having it makes it open. I could see us winning, but I just feel that this sort of game is a must not lose, probably for both teams, because it keeps them probably out of the bottom three. Although for us, the one thing that is running into this, I don't know if you're aware of this, is that Southampton and Ipswich are playing one another again this weekend. So it's one of those that it's one of the few occasions where the bottom three is quite likely to get points. We unfortunately might be in the relegation zone, even if we get a point. I'll go 1-1. I just think that Spurs were a bit poor, but look, I hope I'm wrong. But I think that if you look at it, we still have a lot of the same faults as we did before. They just, we played Spurs at a very good time. But look, that's it. Thank you so much. Thanks for putting this together. If you haven't already, do like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Otherwise, what's coming up on Blue Tinted Glasses, we will have Match Day Live, the watch along with Locks on Saturday, and then we'll have the instant match reaction, which Luke will be joining me at, and we'll talk about the game. Hopefully, we might even get some transfer activity between now and then. I'm not too hopeful, although I will just quickly say I do think we probably will end up signing one player, even if it's only on loan. Will they be a good player? Well, that's a little bit less confident on, but we'll see it. But thank you so much. Thanks. This has been Blue Tinted Glasses, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.